Call to order the Bucksport Infrastructure and Property Committee meeting for Thursday, September 12th, 2024. This meeting will be held in person, but it can also be viewed on local cable channel 1303 or via the internet by going to bucksportmaine.gov and selecting agendas and minutes and clicking on the video button next to the meeting. You can email questions or comments prior to or during the meeting to slassard@bucksportmaine.gov or call during the meeting at 307-8030. Tracy here.
Here.
Mark Eastman here, and Ed Rankin is absent at the moment. Second item on the agenda is Historical Society.
Make it.
Eventually. There we are. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. We're back again. Couple of comments before I start. I think I told at the last council meeting about the couple from North Carolina that spent most of the afternoon, and when she left, she said, "One of the best museums I've been in. I'm going to send you a check." Well, the check arrived. She sent $150 to become a lifetime member. The other thing I want to mention is, I think I mentioned last time, was that this year so far we've added 12 new members. Again, you can be a member but not volunteer to be at the museum. Next spring we have decided we're going to undertake a more aggressive membership drive to try to boost the numbers. And we do have younger members that I want to try to encourage to become docents at the museum. I want to introduce, you know me, you know Larry Wall and Chief Denning certainly. I want to introduce a very valued member of our team, Betty LaForge. Betty LaForge moved to Bucksport a few years ago from Corinth, and she's the founding member of the Corinth Historical Society. And it's a wonderful historical society, museum, and she's hard at work working her magic here. Give you an idea, because I know this concern expressed about artifacts, particularly the vulnerable ones. I want to give you Betty's background so you know what a gem we have. She has her diploma in interior design. She founded the Corinth Historical Society in 1984 and is currently still serving as president of that society. She was a curator for over 20 years. Professional restoration experience includes cleaning and restoration of paintings, restoration of antique pottery and porcelain, restoration of antique dolls, restoration of antique caulkware and plaster statuary, and restoration of paper documents, prints, and artwork. Attended multiple workshops and seminars on conservation and archival storage of artifacts, and put that knowledge into practice at the Corinth Historical Society Museum. And in addition to that, she restored a historical home built in 1808. You probably already know the background, but in terms of location, we did look at several sites, alternative sites, aside from moving it street side from its present location. At that time, unsold lot, Lower Main Street, was ruled out because of all the overhead wires. The cost of, I even inquired about that, and the cost of taking all those wires down to move a building is just astronomical, so it wasn't even feasible. We looked at the parking lot next to the post office. That lot is not big enough to accommodate the building. I met with Jeff Ledbetter and asked if he'd be willing to either donate or sell his lot. That would be a much easier move less wires involved. And he wasn't interested. So I'll say that on location. You know that our concern is the moisture problem that we have, and we want to preserve the heritage of Bucksport in a better environment. We also want to be ADA compliant, which we are not. To build a ramp to our entrance would basically knock out the parking lot that's there, and just not feasible. I also want to point out, and I've got enough copies, I think, for everyone, climate change. And this is a report, it's called Risk Factor, and climate scientists, using data from NOAA, did an assessment of flood risk for Bucksport. And I've highlighted the features, prominent features here, because they say that there is 100% risk of at least one 5-foot flood before 2050. Total buildings below 5 feet in Bucksport, and they list 4 homes, and if you go to the next page, 1 museum. So the museum would be at risk, and we know, if you believe the science, which I do, the Gulf of Maine is one of the hottest or fastest warming spots of the oceans of the world, 97% faster than the rest of the oceans. So that's why we're coming again to ask that you consider preserving the historic building and its contents for the future by moving this building up street side. What I would like to do is take a collaborative approach and basically appeal to the town to do the basic move, the foundation and the move of the building, and then the Historical Society bear responsibility for the bells and whistles, things like heat pumps, other elements. You have before you a proposal that Larry has drawn up, and he's outlined it in 3 phases. Now, this is far more comprehensive than just moving the building up, which would be phase 1, but something that if you wish to further develop the site, could be done at later dates. Larry, would you like to speak on this?
I can answer any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody's got a copy. As you can see, I took these figures, and they've been around for nearly a year. These are the figures that we used in the
Did you all get
I did not.
one?
in the beneficial environment project proposal that we submitted back in January. What I did is, as you can see, broke it down into phase 1 town, phase 1 historical society. But as it turns out, it's pretty much a 50-50 split of the total.
So Larry, would,
Yeah, go ahead.
would phase 1 essentially, because I'm assuming the Historical Society would be relying on grant funding for the match or for the other part, would phase 1 essentially potentially take sort of the environmental risk away from the property, as far as if the grants weren't successful, which can happen from time to time, so you might have to wait another grant cycle.
Right.
Would phase 1 sort of secure that piece of it?
I would ask Betty to answer that.
And it's a 2-part question.
Oh, okay.
And then just the thoughts on where, sort of a write-in for where would the items be kept in transition?
We were told, 3 years ago, we did this and cost estimates. We talked to two movers, and both of them, to my surprise, because I thought we would have to empty the building and store them, and I got quotes for that. And then I talked to the movers, and they said, no, we'll move it, and we can set a glass of water on a case in there, and it won't spill or drop. So that's a big cost savings, not to have to empty the museum and whatever.
For sure, I was surprised it wasn't in there.
And aside from grants, we also do have some funds in reserve that can be applied to meet our share of the cost.
Not a lot, but we.
Not a lot, but some.
Yeah, it's a start.
Yeah.
What does that look like, the funds?
I would say about 25,000.
I think it's around 25,000 in reserve that we have.
Okay.
To answer your question, yes,
Yes,
it would.
it would.
Yeah, I'm just sort of
Yes,
thinking because
yes.
you don't want to be relying on phase two.
No, right,
No.
this is really the
items.
most important part, is to
Yeah.
get it up away from the water. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to
I don't know yet.
Here.
These are for you, I've been looking at them. There you go.
Okay. In relation to the climate change, Gary, what, if it's at risk now, what would the lower level of this building, with the potential fire equipment, where would the risk lie for that?
I think I can answer that for you.
Sure.
Horse drawn equipment really kind of likes some moisture and water, but hopefully there would be enough time to move the larger stuff out and the smaller things could go up higher. So it shouldn't really be an issue. But yes, the horse run, the wheels, they like to have some moisture to keep them from falling apart.
I see.
In fact, they used to take them off and just soak them right in tubs. Yeah.
It would only be that equipment, so they wouldn't be paper products or anything.
No,
No, not in the basement.
I don't think so. Chief Dunning?
No, I think a concern would be an over amount of water. Well, being true, they do require some moisture, but not too much, because if they get too much, then they dry out, you're gonna crack stuff.
That's
And that's what we're always scared to death with these antiques, of making sure they're undercover, dry,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of, right now, they're at the School Street Station, and it's not heated or anything, so it's kind of the weather, they change with the weather, they expand, they shrink.
Sure.
I know over the years, a few of them had developed cracks just because of the age and the exposure. Captain Connor and I, back in the, must've been late '90s, took our 1911 one winter and moved it down to the station, and when we had free time, we actually went from top to bottom, restored a lot of stuff, there were things missing, and Richard Bowden, who worked at the mill, that guy was probably one of the best machinists I've ever met. Would take parts down, and during his lunch break, he'd fashion out identical pieces,
Nice.
and did a great job, so. We do have to, just keep an eye on the exposure to the elements, so. So that was one of my concerns too, if they're sitting down there,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, 'cause where would you put them if the storm came?
Well, we could probably put them in up at the station, get them undercover, or move them up to the School Street Station.
Yeah, I think that could always be, you would have some warning, and if it was gonna be an
Yeah.
astronomical storm, maybe something like that would happen.
I feel like the pressure point is, regardless of the plan, there has to be a plan, because whether it's the fire equipment or what's there now,
Mhm.
that risk exists and
Mhm.
it somehow has to be addressed regardless of what that looks like.
And I know, Rich, did you have some other cost estimates involved?
The town's received two different presentations, both in 2019 from the architects. Larry Wall and myself represented the town and the Historical Society. These were done after the ADAPT planning development action plan for tomorrow, so when these were printed out, really kind of got shut down because the first thing that the Bucksport Enterprise said was a $2.3 million project.
Yeah.
It was done in phases, so we didn't have to continually hire an architect. You cut your cost, you build it into little subdivisions, phases. So really didn't go much past the fact that the Bucksport Enterprise poo-pooed the idea because it was $2.3 million. So basically what you're looking at was a public benefit to enhance the experience for pedestrians and visitors, incorporate new public restrooms in the lower level, provide ADA access between Main Street and Waterfront, still respect the former railroad building, determine the benefits of lifting and relocating it, insulate and heat the entire building for year-round use, including humidity control, and the bottom space was designed for the Bucksport Paper Mill exhibit. So what you'll see is obviously things have changed. We're 5 years down the road now. This is more centered around the ADAPT plan, so we can go buy this stuff away. Just a little bit about us. The site location, the town owns the land, the Historical Society owns the building. Other than the historic building itself, it lacks historic context. There's no tracks, there's no ticket booth, it's just the building. The sewer line was placed in the 80s, but we couldn't find any survey data. The public restroom building was installed in 1995. Now, other things have happened since 2019. We've added the EV chargers, which have a 5-year contract. We can't get rid of the EV chargers, so we'll have to figure something out if things were to go another way. Of course, it's an ideal location for ADA walkway from Main Street to Waterfront because we don't have that. The historical building itself, it's on the National Register of the 28th of April in 1975. Brick chimney was removed in 2015 due to deterioration. It was painted in 2017. The shingles were replaced in 2018. It's a structure that sits on piers, and relocation is feasible. Here's a map of when the building used to be by Main Street. That was from 1881. And in 1895, this shows where the station was relocated off of Main Street. 1975 view, a little bit more recent. And there's the National Registry paperwork. Basically a little site analysis of what would happen. Here's the plan itself. When you move it up to Main Street, 3 different exhibit halls for the Historical Society, a working room to preserve the artifacts, clean them up, what needs to be done, and an upstairs restroom. The downstairs for the Papermaking Museum, 2 wings for the Papermaking Museum, a bathroom, and again, a work area for it, a mechanical room, and an office, a janitorial closet, and a hallway. This is what was being proposed, so the height, if you were to raise it, this is what the folks would see. It'd be a different height view, and it doesn't look like there's much impact on that ADA ramp. That gives you a little bit more perspective of what the proposal was. And the concept cost, like I said, the whole project itself, including fixing the promenade, making it an area with amphitheater and everything like that, $2.2 million. So if the project was going through and you were having the bathrooms, the plan was you'd have to demolish the other building. Well, now that building houses cameras that monitor the walkway in both directions to the gazebo and back towards the hotel. It also has IT equipment in there, and it houses the 2 electric vehicle chargers. So demolishing that building may not be possible unless we can get all sides and all that stuff figured out, or we're gonna have another issue, unintended consequences. Lifting and relocating the building, we had figured 5 years ago at 43,000. Renovate the building, 75,000. New construction, about 360. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, another 329. The ADA ramp, 117. And then of course you got a lot of your contingencies and stuff there. So looking roughly at $1 million, but the better breakdown is right here. $499 a square foot in 2019 for construction.
That's 19 before.
That was 2019 before everything went
Yeah.
kind of whack. So there's your breakdown. 1,565 square foot of renovation, 2,195 of new construction. Again, the demolition and the breakdown. Everything has a per unit cost, which is again over 5 years old now. So for the building itself, and the ADA ramp addition, $1.5 million is what you'd be looking at over there, and that does not include like your contingencies or anything there. But again, the grand total project, $2.2 million. Larry and I spent a lot of time with the architects in regards to this plan. I mean, it wasn't just one meeting. Would you say we probably went half dozen to 8 different times for meetings with them? But again, a lot of things have changed. Last year's storms, speaking of the tide, we're doing a lot of resiliency, right? So last year's storms, I have documented, the water went up to the building. Matter of fact, at Bayfest, we discovered a sinkhole where someone did put a leg down in. We were able to fix it. 2 years prior to that, in the south east corner, kind of where we keep our truck and our storage, that hole washed right out, and town had to get in there and fix that as well. So even though that area is elevated, the water is still penetrating, and it's not just from there, it also comes down as well, so it's getting the double penetration. So when we're focusing on resiliency, we're not just worried about the tide, we're worried about Bucksport's built on a hill, everything that's coming down as well. So we're getting doubly impacted. And again, since 2019, we had a storage shed here for our equipment. We then got rid of that, obviously, and we now have what we have in that area, which is shielded by the location of the Historical Society itself. So these are the quotes. I'm not quite sure what Larry's quotes are, if things have come down. I mean, if it's anything like anything else in the world, it probably hasn't, but.
Well, the figure we're looking at, if I'm correct, Larry, is, a little over 400. Is that what you're, I mean, with half each, you said 215 each.
I think what Larry did and Gary did was contact local contractors, and prices were much more reasonable by doing
This is the
that.
Cadillac, and we're really asking more for the Ford. Renovations of the building, I don't see that that's necessary. We operate quite well with our present layout internally. I mean, it's more a question of, let's keep things as they are in terms of the building itself, and we're responsible for the building, but let's get it out of harm's way. And I think, and I personally feel we owe that to future generations, because what's in that building, once it's gone, Amazon Prime can never replace it. These are unique items. Larry?
Paul's got one thing to add here.
I have a few questions, okay?
Yeah.
Has anybody actually looked at the building underneath to see if it is in fact movable? Or is it gonna implode when they try and lift it? Has building inspection
Yeah,
or
yes.
Yeah.
Well, we
contractor?
had contractors too,
Okay.
and they looked and they went under the crawl space.
Okay,
Mhm.
then the next question I have is, I'm gonna rain on your parade, I'm sorry, but my taxes went up 46%. That's north of $2,000 a year my taxes went up. Every $633,000 you spend over the current budget is gonna raise our mill rate 1.0. Total budgetary cost here is 2.2 million, that's 3.5 mills. So, 3.5 mills versus, if we heat and air condition the building, Are we in fact gonna open it all year? Right now, we're only open July and August.
No, because Gary
Multiple
just said
days.
they don't wanna finish the inside, so that's,
Then, again, I'm back to 3.5 mils.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding our role with the quote. We wouldn't be paying the 3.5 mil, I mean, the 2.2 million. The proposal on the table, at least here, is 220,000.
That's for phase one. What's the total cost? All phases.
Well, this, the one we have in front.
580,170.
Okay, so you're closing in on a mil.
Yeah, 600,000.
Okay, 1 mil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Gary, let me ask you a question. I mean, in the last meeting, the town manager mentioned, and I think a number of us agree, I mean, is the Historical Society prepared to deed it over to the town?
Why would the town want to take it over?
Because we don't wanna have a building that we invest tons of money in that we don't have any control over. I mean, that was
But
brought up
then-
at a previous
Then the
meeting.
town is taking on a continuing cost. And are
But
you
we-
sure you want to do that?
What we don't wanna do is put a building on Main Street and have it black 8 months of the year.
Well, you've got buildings on Main Street that are sitting.
But we can
empty.
look towards the future, or we could, have a plan. I mean, has the Historical Society ever explored identifying a house in the village, as most historical societies do, and moving
Yeah,
the
most,
society there?
I'm not sure most do. You know how most of those historical societies end up with a house in the village? They're deeded to the historical society.
Sure.
And are you proposing that the town is willing to buy us a house and renovate it and outfit it to use as a museum? I think the cost would be prohibitive, and if we're off Main Street, we're not going to have the visitors from 34 states, District
We can
of
disagree,
Columbia.
Gary, because that's just not the case. I mean,
Well,
And I tend to disagree with Councillor Eastman on this, that part of the historical society is the actual building, right? So that's an historical building. that's
but a
sort of in that
building that's
function.
dark 8 months of the year is not.
Yeah, I understand that. But the
beneficial to a
return on
Main Street.
investment for a town doesn't always necessarily have to be money out, money in.
No,
There's
it
a lot more
doesn't.
social return
How
than
many visitors,
historical.
how many visitors came through this season?
You have that figure.
July and August of this year, how many visitors came through?
And we keep in mind, it's 100
I
hours a year.
don't have the exact count, but we had visitors from 34 states.
I'm not asking how many states, I'm asking
I
how many
haven't counted
visitors.
them up.
And, and how many towns?
Yeah, certainly in the hundreds.
I just would like to say something, please.
Sure.
Okay. We have talked about being open and extending our hours, and that is not out of the realm of possibility to us to be open in June and more in September, even without heat. And even our last meeting, we just talked about that. I think there's some interest in doing that. If we can get enough docents, we certainly will do that. Additionally, we are taking on ourselves renovations to the building inside, whether or not it gets moved. It is our mission to preserve the building because it is historic. It is part of what we do. So it's just, to us, it's just like another artifact.
Well, I mean, I think there'll be some struggle to come to these kind of figures without some kind, I mean,
No,
the
I
town moves it,
understand
and then what if you're unable to raise the money or get the funding to go any further? Then we have a building that's a summer building that occupies real estate on Main Street. So it,
Listen, I understand what you're saying, but right now you have so many empty or unused for many hours already. You have the McLeod's building, he's only open like 12 or 16 hours a week. There's no retail space because you have,
People that own these businesses, we can't tell them when to be open.
well, and so, right, and you can't tell us either.
well, but you are coming to us to say.
I just got, I apologize for being late out, I was stuck over at work, sorry about that. But in their defense, they're not coming in asking for $250,000.
Well, that's, or more.
Or more,
To start.
just to start.
Mhm.
I like the building. I love the fire part. I'm public safety, all right?
Yeah.
I'm a cop, but I really do like fire trucks. But $250,000 is a lot of money to start, and for it not to be open, it's hard. If it was open when the docks are in, right, more consistently, 2-3 times a week, well, that's something to think about, right? Or during the day, or, you know, I mean, I can see that. Then people can go in there and they can see it. You know, everything you've talked about is, well, we're gonna put the fire stuff in there. Great. But when can they see it? When can
Well,
someone?
that will, the fire
but-
stuff, they'll see all the time.
Yeah, but I don't wanna go up and I don't wanna look through a window to see fire stuff. I wanna be able to go in and see it. I wanna be able to touch it. I'm a kid, if I'm a kid, right?
Well,
I have a fire museum where I work, okay? And we have people that come in and see it, they touch it. They get on a fire truck that's old, okay? That's,
As a preservationist, I wouldn't allow that, but, you know, that would be up to the fire department because that
Just-
stuff belongs to
Eddie,
them.
do you want to speak about the building that you have in Corinth in terms of how it operates and how you heat it and?
Well, yes, okay, we have an old Grange Hall, it's, we have 2 floors of exhibits. It is unheated, and we are open June to, the end of August. And we're only open 1 day a week at this point because of staffing. We were open 2 days a week, and we were open until October 12th. We have the same problem that a lot of historical society has up there, that we have an aging population, but this year, we just got 3 young people. So we are looking forward to extending that more. Every year, we had a history day in which the 4th grade of the school was invited to our building. We toured them, we gave them history booklets to, they had puzzles and all kinds of different things so they could interact and education. And we would go to the school and help with a program there that the school did, whereby the children would pick out a famous Maine person, and they would have to write in the first person a little bio of this person, and they would dress up. They'd have to dress up as the person. They'd have like a button on the floor, and they invited the parents in. The parents would go around and they'd push the button, and the child participant would become that famous person. And we did exhibits on the stages of the school. So that's the kind of participation that we have in Corinth.
And the heating of the building, you use heat pumps, don't you?
No, we have no heat.
No,
We have no heat.
No heat.
We do have dehumidifiers, that's it, at this point.
And I think that's where my question is sort of going. Like, I feel like we're expecting a nonprofit historical society to be like a retail for-profit business. I think historical societies generally aren't open full-time, 9 to 5 every day. Like,
Sure.
I don't think the hours in Bucksport are anything of an abnormality for historical societies writ large across the country. And so I think our conversation to focus on open hours is a little bit disingenuous to the history piece, because this is not about a retail business or an entertainment business. It's about a different kind of structure of business in the United States that preserves our history. And so most historical societies are functioning on limited volunteer assistance. And I understand the price tag, and so I'm not
Well,
gonna
there's also the
sort of-
location, Tracy,
Can I
because.
finish
Sure.
first? Thanks. So I also wanted to talk about, like, I think we have to do something with the building to raise it or move the items. And so that decision really comes down to the council, sort of, if we wanna move the items, are we willing to move them out of a building that is part of the artifact? So I think we just have some, I think our thought process, we need to unpack it more, but it's expensive. And it's a lot of money to, like Mr. Rab said, to ask of taxpayers and to ask of a town. I feel like we haven't actually given you enough leeway to run with what our fundraising opportunities might be as a town, but I do feel like we have to sort of think about a historical society in historical society context, not in a retail restaurant context, or it's a museum. Museums have limited hours by nature of their organization. Yes.
I know I rained on the parade earlier, but to me, it's value equals the benefit minus the cost, okay? The cost is where I spoke to.
Yeah.
We've got 3 more years to pay for the massive paving project that we did. That's a substantial amount of money. If we can put something like this off till we end up getting rid of that 3 years of a substantial part of money, then we'll have the money to do phase 1, and we can go down this historical road, so to speak. But right now, it's just, it's about the money.
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind, because we all have our opinions here, and we've had our opinions for some time, and I'm fine with those opinions. But here's the thing, that where the rubber meets the road on this is here. I'm not seeing numbers that don't preclude this from going to the voters. This project, in all likelihood, especially when you consider, is going to have to go to the voters. It really is in everyone's best interest to make sure that if it does in fact have to go to the voters, that it's tight. Mr. Rabs makes a very good point, that if this is gonna go to the voters, that value piece needs to be on point. And I think, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, I think we've really gotta get to a point where we start to establish what the priorities are here, work through our opinions, and get to a place where if this in fact does go to the voters, it's something that both the Historical Society and the Bucksport Town Council are aligned on in terms of getting the voters to approve it. I'm just trying to bring it back here a little bit, that's all.
To Mark's point earlier, though, we gotta figure out something of ownership or whatever, because we're gonna get a lot of pushback if we have no vested interest.
Yeah, and everyone brings, this is obviously very emotional, right? It's the history of the town and the stuff that's in that building, and this is 2019, right? And the town was involved with the painting, I think probably helped with the chimney or the shingles, with the grants. Because the town owns the land, right? And the Historical Society owns the building, which, in my understanding with grants, precludes them from applying for grants, because they don't own the land underneath the building. So, and I could be wrong, and correct me if I am, and that's why.
No, you are wrong. If the town agrees, we've done this in Corinth. So if the town agrees on, because we do not own our building. So if the town agrees, we can apply for grants. So we would have to have a letter from the town that would allow us in.
Like an MOU or something?
I'm not exactly sure what they called it, but I know we had to have a letter of agreement for the town so that we could apply for the grant, but it is possible to do that.
Yes, through that. So in normal standards, without the town's buy-in, can't do the grants. So
What's involved in a letter of agreement?
you're about to see a whole bunch of that on tonight's agenda. The CDBG grant that we've got to help Penquist. That's the town being the primary. These guys being this in this instance would be the Historical Society being the secondary, and then you work out. This is your responsibility. This is your responsibility. Make sure it gets done, right? So because if this building gets raised, I think it's, and now I'm going to get this wrong. It's either 7 inches or 7 feet. It loses its historical value. It's no longer a historic building on the preservation. We spoke with the registry. So,
but I just have a question on that. You said that it was originally further up anyway.
right, which is how I'm not sure how
So
it even got it.
where did that information come from, and that could be presented to the Maine Historic Preservation?
I think
Also,
Gary-
I think they may have a variance because of, they may allow it because of the sea
I
level rise.
spoke with the, what's his name, Dr. I remember, at his Maine Historic Preservation, and he raised that issue. And I told him, I said, if the building, he said, are you talking about moving the building? And I said, we would like to move the building from its present location forward to street level. He didn't, he said, it may not affect, they would have to see and make a determination, but he said, it doesn't necessarily mean you would lose, your place on the National Register.
So to go around to what I'm basically getting at is maybe we can look at a condominiumization project, whereas there's a 99-year lease or something signed with the Historical Society up top. We want ADA access, we want a ramp around that is the only ADA access to the waterfront from Main Street, the connectivity. That could potentially come through the VPI that the voters already approved. You connect those projects together. The downstairs, and I mean no disrespect to the fire department or public safety whatsoever, needs to be rented out. It's rented out either as business incubation or something where the taxpayers can see their money being realized. A waterfront walkway, bistro, a restaurant, something else. That way, everyone gets something out of it.
Excuse me, you can't have food service industry underneath the building because of damage to the artifacts upstairs.
What's your goal
So
here?
you could
Your
not have a
goal is to
grill,
attach
can
an
have
income
anything like that.
to the cost, correct?
Or something that's gonna be valuable to the town, like our equipment. The problem is there's gotta be give and take.
Yeah.
And all the presentations on behalf of the Historical Society has been, we're gonna take and we're not gonna give. The town's expected to give, but the Historical Society is asking the town with its land, with its taxpayers' dollars, and with what we already have in place, to pretty much say, we don't care about, and they're not saying this, but we don't care about the taxpayers, we care about our building, which is historical in nature, which it is, and our artifacts. Give us this, we need this. Because they've seen what's happened to the Chamber of Commerce, they've seen what's happened to the Masons, they've seen what's happened to the Grange Hall.
Yep.
There was no money to save those, and those groups are now out of this community.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, but there's gotta be a win-win, and there's gotta be a meeting place. You can fire rate buildings, the fire chief is here, you can do that. We're not displaying the fire trucks now, and it's great. It's great to want to show that. But we also have a firehouse building up on School Street that's sitting there housing this and is also related with the fire, which is also not gaining taxes. This building is probably the most profitable in town, and this building gets no taxes. We're not helping the taxpayers. The more and more we don't think about the taxpayers, we need to think about all things, and that, I agree with Tracy's points. She's spot on, and I agree with Mark, but there's gotta be some wiggle room. It can't just be about the Historical Society. It's gotta take into consideration the taxpayers as well, because 2 years in a row, the taxpayers have been hit hard. And if we hit them hard again, it may not be fun at the elections the next time someone's out.
Then, Mr. Chair, I've got to reinforce something Rich just said. These discussions can't turn into is, let's take a look at this idea, oh no, we can't do that. I'm telling you, that cannot happen. The Bucksport Town Council cannot be a thing for what Rich just said. Because if we are going to ask the taxpayers of this community to invest at the level that is even being discussed this evening, I'm not gonna be taking questions as to, did you consider? And say repeatedly, no, we didn't. And just, at some point, that's the real reality of this.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of this is I fully understand the Historical Society's scope here and what you're trying to do. Totally. At least I think I do. But you've got to understand that there's a bigger scope here, and I know you do. I don't mean to, I'm just saying, this has to be sold. I don't know of a nicer way to say it. This has got to be sold to the taxpayers as well. And if we haven't done the work to say, we've explored this option, we explored that option, we ruled this out because, we ruled that out because, and this is the direction we decided to go. If you don't go through the process of actually, making the sausage, then you're not gonna sell anything. It is what it is.
I would just like to, I just want to do a little rebuttal from, what Rich said. In 2009, MAM, which is Maine Archivists and Museums Association, did a study, and it was an economic study, on the impact of historical societies and archival, institutions. And $150 million, it represents $150 of income to the state of Maine in 2009, and $7.5 million in tax benefit. So, I mean, this is many years later. I know we've gone through a pandemic, but it is proven fact that historical societies have a positive, museums and archival institutions have a positive impact on the economics of a community. I think if you just look at the Penobscot Marine Museum in Searsport, and you can see how much improved that town was after that institution has, you know, come into effect and grown, and it brings in all kinds of tourist dollars to that town.
I mean, I guess for me, I'm still not sure on what the price is. We've got you know, what, 645 or whatever this was? No, 580, and we've got 1.8 million to 2.3 million
The
up
Cadillac
there.
versus the Ford, yeah.
I mean, there's a big disparity between the two, and in selling a plan, I think we have to arrive at what that even really looks like.
You may have discussed this before I got here, but was there any mention on the move the building twice, 75,000? Move it where and why?
You would need to move it twice, I think, to put it where you want it to land,
You
You'd
have to
have
move
to
it
move-
up and move it over.
You have
and
to
then move it
the
back.
building back. Is my Larry, is that correct?
To move it so you can do your construction.
Do your construction, and then the second move is to put it on the foundation.
And does this take into account the engineering of that wall and what that would mean?
Well, you have depending on where it goes in that area, you have power lines there, you have trees, you have natural gas. So if it stays away from the sidewalk, you should be able to eliminate that. What you are taking away is the overnight parking for the people that live in the apartments and in the area when we need to remove snow, but that's all solvable. The hidden stuff that we need to also look at and consider is, where are we going to put cameras now on the waterfront to monitor, to make sure things aren't getting destroyed? You know, we have a big problem already, even with these cameras there. If we move these, now we have blind spots that we can't see and protect the public. The electric vehicle chargers, where are they going to go?
They'd have to be incorporated into this design somehow.
And then we also have, the bathrooms upgrade would be more than welcome. So that's fantastic, but then what do we do with the trailer for what the town's equipment is of who maintains the waterfront? We can't have them here because what we went through before, that was the ideal location in that area, and it's hidden by the building. So do we take, and instead of maybe doing the rental space, that's where we put the town's equipment?
And that was our original proposal.
That was one of the original proposals, yeah.
Rich, is there any, pushing on the boundaries here of this box, is there any, depending on some of the timing here, and I'm not asking you for an answer right now, but is there any advantage towards, when we're looking at doing the Main Street project, the timing of this too? I wonder if it doesn't behoove this committee to consider ways that those two could do this instead of work against one another.
And the
I think
timing
it
of
would work
that
well
could,
together.
if someone on this board was familiar with writing grants.
But he's not pointing.
But I'm just saying, in general. We could look at what may or may not be an actual possibility, because this cloud of the question mark of grant scenario seems to be floating around, but really can't get anything pinpointed to see what does and doesn't take action on it. And that would take someone knowledgeable to do that kind of research to see what would be possible.
Because the Main Street project's potentially 2, 3, 4 years out, correct?
So, we didn't get, we're not able to apply for the raise grant portion of it because Bucksport's the only community. I said the other night, economic development, there was 2, but that fell through. It's just Bucksport, so that push, we're gonna go a different route. We're gonna go the same route that we went with the town dock project through congressional directed spending. So, that timeframe puts you into 2025. so probably not till about 2026. But the synergies you have is the connectivity of Main Street, which would need, in this instance, need that building. You create that ADA access that gets you back at your interchange points and everything. You could, and it's come up at the public workshop where folks ask that same thing, you know, can we get connectivity to the waterfront? Because remember, when we host these festivals on the waterfront, you can't park on the waterfront. So we're expecting folks with mobility issues to get down to the waterfront via the steep hills that we have here to get down there.
Including us with the games.
So I do see an avenue, and remember, we did mention that the voters approved up to 1.2 million, but the town's realizing $300,000 in savings because the 50-50 split of the project engineering has now gone 90-10 with the DOT 90% and the town 10%, so that saved the town $300,000.
Yeah, because we also need to talk about the fact that once we start doing any work to the building, that ADA compliant piece becomes a priority.
Necessity.
Oh, it's when you're dealing with grants, and I think Tracy can vouch for me, it's not a we may, it is you have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the bigger grants, like the smaller $10,000, you've probably received Belvedere before, those are much less paperwork, but with the federal grants, and we'll see tonight in our agenda, we have all of those.
And if you do apply for a federal grant, it is a priority that we get approval from the Maine Historic Preservation, because if we were bumped off of the preservation list, then, you couldn't use federal money, you know, to do a project that would bump us off
Yeah.
the list, so.
I do think it's worth asking that, though, what's the
Yeah.
difference between the move back then and the move now?
Yeah,
that
what
we
is that?
shifted?
Cause I had
I
never
don't-
seen that before.
Larry, did you provide that information to the, I'm trying to remember.
heard of that.
The first one?
Yeah, from the move, the 18, because I think you had the documentation, right, from 1885?
So let's go back to 1885.
Yes, we're just restoring it to its former glory.
Right.
I think the only reason it's important is because if you're eliminated from federal fund access, it's game over.
Right,
There's no
right,
private
yes.
foundation
Yeah, I
that can
think-
pick up that kind of bill.
I think that's kind of the first thing we have to
Yeah.
figure out.
I still think, in terms of priorities, there's gotta be a conversation about them. And I know we can't just pack up box up materials and store them somewhere. I know that there are materials that you can't just do that. But the conversation around the materials that's in there now and preventing any future degradation as much as possible, I think, for the short term has to be near the top of the list.
Well, you know, right now we are starting to do those preservation projects.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been buying archival materials and starting to get that process
Yeah.
going. So, it's something that, you know, they weren't
I
familiar how to do.
understand what Counselor Hare said about, you know, not treating it as a, you know, a restaurant and stuff like that. I totally understand it, and that's not what I meant. I meant, you know, if it was open twice a week, you know what I mean? If we knew June, July, or July, August, is it,
Say that.
Nothing more than 6 to 8 inches.
was it
will
July,
impact
August that it's
something.
open? You know, but if it was more,
No, but
when
what
we
about
have
the,
people here, you know, June,
1885
Is-
thing or something?
you know,
Freaky.
kinda towards the end of May, right? Our boats start coming in.
Really?
Or
Recall
like
it
whenever there's a
south.
cruise ship in.
Every time a
they
cruise-
open every
That,
day.
every
that's
time
what
a
I'm
cruise
talking about,
ship's
on that
here, it's
basic
Docks in,
map.
the docks
So
out.
we have to
You
look
know,
at that map.
docks
and
in, the
find
docks
that
out,
map
maybe
and
once or
present
twice a
that map
week.
to the
Yeah.
Maine
You know,
Historic Preservation.
and I'm not saying 8
And
hours
this
a
is the
day,
original location,
know,
we're moving it back to
Docks
that.
in, the docks
I think
out.
that
4
would
hours,
actually
you know, and a couple
make
times a
it
week,
fine.
or,
But
Do you
it'd
have
have to be
that
more
map,
than,
Larry?
Larry's over
I
here.
think
Oh, he's-
every day a cruise ship is there,
every time a cruise ship
should be.
open,
And-
my opinion.
And
Well,
we're
but
willing
that-
to do that.
Oh, no, I'm not,
No.
I'm not saying you should be open 7 days a week, you know, that's not what I meant. I just, when these docks, that's the bread and butter of of Bucksport, right? And if we know the cruise ships are coming in, right? And you had said it last meeting, right, sir? And I love that.
Well, I
And
told Rich, I gave him, my
Yeah.
email. We do private tours when anyone wants, whether it's cruise ship. Next week, I'm doing a tour for the Reach School.
Yeah,
Sure.
me too, I'm
I
gonna be
would
there.
love to get
Yeah.
our public schools involved, but I've struck out every time I've tried,
yeah,
frankly. I've done them for senior centers, and we'll do them, and we've done some for cruise ship passengers who just show up, and if someone happens to be at the building doing,
What
to
we
get
need
it
with
going.
that is a communication system whereby there's probably an activity director on board.
they have historians.
They really need to be able to communicate with us directly in some way.
yeah.
And I don't know how that process would happen, but, we talked at our last meeting, and there's several of us they're very willing to go in at any time.
Sure.
Or it could start with us giving you a schedule of,
That
'cause
would help.
we know at the beginning of the season when they're gonna be there.
Hey, this is when they're gonna be here, and
And
maybe
if we
contact
had a contract
information.
with American Cruise Line.
Yeah.
Now, this summer, when we had quite a group that Rich happened to bring by, and we gave them the tour and whatever, and the historian came later, and I gave him a tour, and he loved it. He videotaped, and he took all the information about the museum, our rack cards and whatever, and he asked for my email address, and he said, because he's not on every ship that comes in,
Mhm.
he works. And I told him, I said, anytime you're coming into Bucksport and you want a tour of the museum, people on board want a tour, send me an email. If I can't do it, Eddie can do it, or someone else.
I think that's what we
Right.
need, is a relationship with
Yes.
that particular person on each ship.
Because they're coming in frequently.
And they know what they're doing for activities, you
Sure.
know, so.
I think getting relationships like that, those are key, having those relationships. And now, we had talked last meeting about grants, and you said you had applied for a couple. Had you been able to find any others that you might be eligible
Yes.
for, or?
There is, well, it's a federal grant called Imagine for Small Museums.
Okay.
Those are available. Community development grants.
Okay.
But more recently, we've been doing some grant proposals for the Paper Mill Museum.
Sure.
And, but we're always looking for grant opportunities and corporate sponsorships.
The schools don't do that anymore?
Even in Corinth, we have trouble with that,
I-
you know, since the pandemic.
It's
you
been
know.
several years since I went to the school, and I think I'll go back again, but I've been 2 or 3 times over the years I've been involved, and
There's new
no
leadership.
particular interest. And I was pleased that the Reach School, today they had a tour of the Paper Mill Museum, and next Thursday, this coming Thursday, yes, I'll give them a tour of the historical museum.
I remember as a kid, I went in a couple different grades with
Yeah.
the whole grade,
Mhm.
4th grade, 6th grade, whatever it was. That was a long time ago.
I think the curriculum has kind of gotten away from history for some reason, I don't know.
It'd be an interesting way to engage student credits as volunteers to keep the museum open longer.
They could be trained as docents, but, you know, we also could develop a program whereby we go to the school and do a presentation there. And Corinth has done that as well. But that is also part of our mission, is education, so, that outreach is very important.
So the communication with the cruise ships, it just takes a little bit of time to develop it. So there
Yeah.
are 3 different ships that call on Bucksport, and weather related, there's actually 4. So what you saw that left today, there's another one coming in tonight. So the fort had the issue a little bit with them, and it's smoothed out. It's great. They have the contact in Connecticut who handles all the ships, and that's now a regular stop. They're not sending people to Bar Harbor anymore, unless it's that one weather-related ship that comes in because they're supposed to go to Bar Harbor but cannot
Yeah,
get there.
yeah.
That's the only, everyone else is being bused to the fort, and a lot of them are walking here, so.
And I've also been told that they've been, bused also to.
Bangor.
Bangor.
Well, no, and to, Searsport for the Penobscot Marine
Yeah,
Museum as well.
yeah.
So it works, so it can work, it takes time. Well, remember, we went from 8 cruise ships to this year, we're at 26,
Wow.
and we still got more, and we got the one coming in tonight,
That's good.
3 next week.
Do you have a contact with their office in Connecticut? Do they have contact then with all the ships that will be coming here to Bucksport?
I have a Zoom meeting with them at 9 o'clock tomorrow.
I take it that's a yes.
It sounds like it.
Contacts or everything.
Do you have, does the
In every
Historical
business.
Society have any social media presence at all?
Yes, we have Facebook and we have a website.
You do?
Twitter?
And getting a lot of hits on the website.
No, not Twitter.
And we also have, at our last meeting, voted, you know, the booklet, Bucksport Bay Area,
Mhm.
it's put out every year. And I was in the town office waiting for a meeting with Sue Lassard, and I was sitting there and I saw it, I'd never seen this booklet before, and it said 21 things to do in Bucksport. No mention of the museum, so at our last meeting, we voted, we're taking a full page ad in next year's, Bucksport Bay Area booklet,
That'll include both museums.
and both museums,
That booklet's the old chamber guide.
yeah.
The website looks pretty good, actually.
Yes, yeah, I was just gonna say, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen the
Yeah.
It's-
website, it's brand new and
It's
Yeah.
updated with
Very
the,
well.
Mill Museum, looks good.
Yeah,
The Facebook page needs to be updated
yeah.
more frequently. They haven't done put much on it for a while.
The younger your members get, the better your Facebook page will be.
Well,
They're
as a
saying-
matter of fact,
They're saying-
it is a
It's
younger,
hard for, it's
a
hard.
younger person, it's,
Mhm.
some of you would remember the teacher, Charlie Clapper.
Yeah,
His granddaughter, Jean Lamontanero, who lives in Castine.
sure.
And she designed and she updates our,
Oh, very nice.
The web
website,
Very nice.
and she's very talented.
That would be, that's where I was going with this. I think you could easily, just like Rich gets high school kids involved, and
Mhm.
you could get them involved in projects just to do really nice, these kids, even the worst photographer of these kids does amazing videos.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. In Corinth, I know our Facebook page is updated almost daily, and we get so much interaction with the Facebook page. I'd like to see that happen more in Bucksport. And the more recent thing you put on there, and I say recent by like maybe a newspaper clipping from my age group. That's not really very recent, but anything that someone can relate to,
Yeah, sure.
we get a lot more interactions with those.
Dan?
So I haven't said very much, I've just been listening to, I do tend to agree most with Tracy about how to look at it. I think that's really important. I hear Paul, like, you're not wrong when it comes to money. And I remember one of the things that was literally the first thing I voted on, and I voted against it. It was Larry and the Wilson Hall. And I had no offense, Larry, at all. I was like, this thing's been sitting there forever. We need to take it down. I know it's not the same situation, but he did some amazing things with it. And I feel like what he did with it was he did what Rich was saying, is by tying in something else to make it so that it's affordable and it is bringing something. So I think a combo of all those different things, what you're saying, is going to be the ultimate answer. And the one thing I get afraid of are some of these conversations, because it starts to go and then the time ticks out and then we're done and we've had no solution to anything. And so I think we need to like kind of go back to what are we looking for at the end of this meeting to either bring to the council or set up another one so that we can finish out and have priorities to have something done at the end. Or either we're moving forward with certain pieces of this, or we're not, and they're going back to the drawing board and fixing social media and, you know, trying to get more memberships. And this is for me, it's 6 years
Yep.
of these conversations and then us giving suggestions on what they can do, and then we come back to talk about it again sometime.
So how do we go about,
We need a firm price, we need to know the movement of the building, whether that impedes, cause you said you had a slide up there that said 6 or 8 inches.
It did, and that was, again, that's 2019, things may have changed. Larry did notice and pointed out that the architects made an error.
That's where it
That was the
was.
wrong building. The railroad station's in the same spot as it was in 1885, according to those two maps. So
All right.
they circled the wrong building, and
Uh-huh.
thank you for Larry pointing that out, but I agree with Councilor Ormsby, there's gotta be next steps, and what is everybody's responsibility,
And
as
it,
it has been 6 years.
and it could be everybody's responsibility to come up with ideas for potential partnerships before the next meeting, if that's the biggest thing that we seem to all agree on, is that type of direction for potential partnerships, see what sort of ideas would fit that situation.
and incorporating it with the Main Street project?
I think
Go ahead.
that's a great idea.
So, I would like to simplify it, like right down to like the nitty gritty here. I think there are 2 things that would be a priority before you even get into the funding. One is the clarification with the main historic preservation. And 2, whether you really want this building to be removed and you would approve it if everything was all, you know, in the best way you could get it. I mean, if you think conceptually that building should be on Main Street, if it would look good, if you think it would be a benefit, we think it would be a benefit. I think those 2 things before you even get into the funding, but definitely you have to get clearance from, the Maine Historic Preservation Commission.
Is that something you guys would do?
I could go and meet with them.
I think your last one has, I think a lot of stuff has to be answered before it, and some of it has to do with the price tag on it. Because some of the price tag, depending on the price tag, has nothing to do with all the members that are sitting here, because it could get to a price tag that's gotta go to the voters, right?
Correct.
So regardless, if we wanted it all to happen, it would have to go to the voters. So, realistically, we would, a lot depends on that final number on what it would be.
Okay,
and-
so
and how-
without-
And how what everyone decide on. So, you kinda have to have those, all right, can it be done? Can it be moved and us use grant funding and stuff like that,
So
right?
that's where the historic preservation piece comes in.
That's
In order to get
number
federal
one.
granting, that has to be done first.
100%.
But in order to move forward today, could we at least agree to have another meeting with you folks and look at an economic driver in the basement that maybe not, I agree, I don't think food distribution, because I can smell Bucksport House of Pizza on Franklin Street.
It's detrimental to artifacts,
But
that's
you know what I
why.
mean, but
Couple
I
food
do
trucks
see
in
your,
there.
I agree with Dan, and I appreciate how you summed all that up. I think you hit the sweet spot of the meeting, really, right? I think we all care about the history of our town, we all care about our bottom line, but I feel like we can just make a commitment to
Sure.
looking at it again with an
Definitely.
economic driver somewhere for the taxpayers to be on board
There's-
with.
There's gotta be some determination about, are we finishing the building, or are we just putting it up on a foundation, you know, as it is? I mean, that has to be figured out one way or the other, cause
Yeah.
they've said no, but we've said in other meetings that it must, you know, that we're not gonna do it halfway.
When it comes to meeting, and I hate having the extra meetings, but I tend to think about everything ahead. You know, tonight we set this meeting, and we have another meeting where we have a lot on the agenda too, so I got a lot in my mind. Is it possible maybe we don't do this on a on a council meeting night? Does that, you know what I'm, you know what I
I'm fine
mean,
with
where
that.
the only thing that we discuss and the only thing that we come here for is to discuss this. So that's the only priority that we have. Would that make sense?
I think it would make sense to get the answers first and then.
Right, right, make sure all right, we have the answers so we know what we're there to discuss, and that's the only thing that we're focused on. We're not focused on anything else but this. So then we can get answers to this.
I absolutely agree with you.
I do too.
You know, and then we're not thinking about the other grants or the 6:45 meeting or anything like that. It's just my 2 cents. It's just, we're focused on one thing and then we can move on instead of, oh, geez, we're pressed for time.
I don't think it would hurt
Type of thing.
either to have part of that meeting be down there, so we can.
See it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start off with a tour.
Yep.
At your home and see what you're talking about and kind of feel it,
Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
Yeah,
So-
that's a great idea.
I support your proposal if we could have a separate meeting to really, because it has been 6 years, and let's not keep spinning our wheels and kicking the can. And what would you like the Historical Society to do in preparation for the next meeting?
Go ahead, Dan.
What we talked about is I'd like to just, you to get in touch with, you said the
Maine Historic Preservation Commission in Augusta.
Get in touch with
Yeah.
them and
Mhm.
tell them what we're talking about
Yeah.
and get all of their ideas and
Right.
thoughts about what,
Yep.
what we can
I
do.
wanna talk to Earl Shuttlesworth anyway.
Yeah.
And then probably the Historical Society should talk about ownership of, where's that gonna land? And we need to as well, but.
Right. And also, we need to incorporate the price of the ADA walkway and all that stuff.
As well
Anything
as the value
extra,
of the land.
anything extra above and beyond,
Mhm.
cause this is just the basic.
Yep.
Maybe you have an answer on that. That's not in that quote.
Well,
That was
the
something we
Historical
had talked
Society's
about.
position is not to add heat right now. So that's where we've gotta come, where are we gonna be comfortable? Is it?
Right, but I know when we had talked about this at the last meeting, we're like, all right, if we're gonna do this, why are we patching something?
There's heat in the quote,
There is heat in the quote?
28.5,
Okay,
phase 1.
all right.
I think it's heat pumps.
Heat and cool,
Heat,
pumps,
yeah.
okay. Heat and cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to have some type of temperature.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
HVAC.
you gotta have an HVAC in there to control the, yeah.
Humidity.
Somebody on you wanna put this for now? Are we done with the conversation?
At the council, how do you wanna put it? Send it to council for a specific meeting on a non-council night?
It's a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And then, item 3?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Feel lucky.